Who are the top 5 Arizona Cardinals on the roster as currently constructed? What are the 5 biggest storylines going into the 2022 NFL season? And who are the 5 biggest X factors on the Cardinals roster? I'm going to hit them all. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Here we go.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in Locked On Cardinals. Alex Clancy here, Thursday edition on YouTube, free and available wherever you get your podcast normally that you just, put your earbudsies in. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast at Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for everyone who makes Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Free and available on all platforms. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You can also check me out today on the Locked On NFL YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts with Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans. We do our Locked On NFL Thursday national show. Always fun, always exciting. I did one top 5 list yesterday, and the next 2 days are going to be chock full of them. I've got to give Tyler, my Locked On NFL Thursday co-host, kudos for this. Normally, I didn't have any problem coming up with content, but his idea, I'm mirroring what he did with these storylines. He did 9 of them over 3 days. I'm only going to do 6, but I thought it was super exciting, and I'm going to hit – these are hot and heavy. Like, these are really, really good lists. Top 5, every segment, I'm going to do a different one. I'm going to start off hot. Top 5 best players on the Arizona Cardinals roster. Now, the way I constructed this list is the best at their position / the best at or the most impactful at their position. So, number 5, the newly acquired Hollywood Brown. We've seen what he can do in a predominantly run-first play defense system. Lamar Jackson's got better as a thrower of the football as he's progressed throughout the years, but Hollywood Brown hasn't been in an offense like this. He's also not the wide receiver one, even though DeAndre Hopkins is out for the first 6 weeks. So I will say Hollywood Brown is the 5th best player on the Arizona Cardinals. Number 4 is DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, even though he's missing 6 games, is still going to be like a 4th round pick in fantasy football drafts, that redrafts. Like, he's still a top 5 wide receiver in the league, in my opinion, when he's healthy. And people just forget because they haven't seen him play in a long time. DeAndre Hopkins is an absolute demon, as Kyler Murray likes to call players who are exemplary at their craft. So I feel like DeAndre Hopkins being the 4th, he may have slipped a bit because he's going to miss the first 6 games, but still the 5th best player on the Arizona Cardinals roster. Number 3, or the 4th best, sorry. Number 3, Budda Baker. Budda Baker, I talked a lot about him yesterday. I guess you could say I pseudo-gushed about Budda Baker yesterday. I mean, he's like a babyface assassin. He's a great interview, obviously very personable, and he's an absolute missile. He's an absolute missile. This is the best draft pick Steve Keim has ever made, in my opinion. Sure, Kyler Murray, unopposed, at number 1 overall. Sure, like you could say him, I get it. But what Steve Keim moved up to the top of the 2nd round to draft Budda Baker. This is the best move he's made as a GM through the draft. I mean, obviously there's a lot of futility here, but I feel like moving up to draft Budda Baker is the best move Steve Keim has made since his tenure started as GM of the Arizona Cardinals in 2013 via the draft. Number 2, Rodney Hudson. I mean, Rodney Hudson is the most important player not named Kyler Murray on this roster because he protects and is the spine for the group that protects the most important player on the team, which is Kyler Murray. Like, this is without question. This was an easy top 5 for me, honestly. Easy top 5. Because Chandler Jones is gone, because Byron Murphy hasn't really made that step you think he would have potentially have made at this point. Obviously, this year is a big year for him being a contract year. But I feel like Hollywood Brown 5, DeAndre Hopkins 4, Budda Baker 3, Rodney Hudson 2, and Kyler Murray is 1. This is the easier of the 3 lists that I've had to do. Now, there's obviously a bunch of middle ground like, oh, could Isaiah Simmons be number 5? Maybe. Could Zach Ertz be number 5? Maybe. Could James Conner be number 5? Probably. But the reason why I omitted James Conner is because replicating what he did last year is going to be difficult. You hope he does it. But I feel like Hollywood Brown, with how much effort they're going to put into the pass game, with DeAndre Hopkins out, I feel like, so let me do it this way. Because DeAndre Hopkins is suspended for 6 games, that's why I put Hollywood Brown on there. That's why I put Hollywood Brown on there. If DeAndre Hopkins wasn't suspended for 6 games, James Conner would be 5th, DeAndre Hopkins 4th, Budda Baker, Rodney Hudson, and Kyler Murray. I feel like I got to put that distinction in there. Because DeAndre Hopkins is out 6 weeks, that's why Hollywood Brown made the list. Otherwise, James Conner would have been 5. You could argue he'd be higher, but I feel like Kyler Murray, Rodney Hudson, and Budda Baker are a no doubt about it. 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 can be rummaged about. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen. If this is your first time listening, thank you. If this is your second time listening this week, thank you. Maybe make tomorrow your third. It's going to be a fun show. Coming up next, the top 5 list roll on. The top 5 biggest storylines going into the 2022 NFL season. That's going to be fun. Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy. Next, first, Rock Auto. Rock Auto is just top 1 of 1. You don't even need a list. The other 4 that would be on this list doesn't even matter. RockAuto.com is a family-owned business. They've been online for 20 years. Okay? You don't have to go to a chain storefront and feel awkward like I do. Like, hey, ma'am or mister, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Can you help me find things over there? Yeah, you need to show me. RockAuto.com, you can be embarrassed privately while you're searching, which is easier than ever to find the parts that you need for your car or truck. Just type in paint, tail lamps, make and model, boop, 2 days later, 3 days later, on your front doorstep. Again, prices are reliably low. You're not going to get upcharged like you would at a chain storefront, 30, 40, 50% sometimes for stocking fees or supply chain or whatever the hell it is. RockAuto.com doesn't do that for you. Go to RockAuto.com, write Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices. All the parts a car will ever need, Rock Auto. All right, second segment. This is a full stocked top 5 list Thursday here on Locked On Cardinals. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Leave your comments. If you want to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, you can do that too. If not, cool. I just like to enjoy your time with me. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate it. Honestly, appreciate it. 3 days a week through the week of July 17th. Starting July 18th, I'll be back to 5 days a week with the best content for Arizona Cardinals fans out there. You can agree with me, you can disagree with me, but I'm just happy that you're here. Top 5 best players for the Arizona Cardinals. 5-1, Hollywood Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, Budda Baker, Rodney Hudson, Kyler Murray, with the asterisk that if DeAndre Hopkins was playing a full season, James Conner would have taken the place of Hollywood Brown. DeAndre Hopkins is out. Therefore, Hollywood Brown's going to have more wide receiver 1 opportunities. Therefore, for 2022, Hollywood Brown is going to be the 5th best player as we're sitting right now. Biggest storylines. It's more like there's a couple that are obvious, okay? But then there's a couple that, for the Arizona Cardinals specifically on a micro scale, are things to look out for. The micro scale part is interesting because when you look at, the Cardinals as a whole, there are the set it and forget it guys, a handful of them. There are a lot of he could do this, he could do this. And then there are, the guys you hope can take a step forward, whether it be free agents or second-year guys, whatever. Like, there's definitely a hierarchy with the Cardinals roster, and it doesn't really bleed. So this one is the top 5 biggest storylines. Number 5 for me is Byron Murphy, CB1. Is he going to take that next step? Or is he going to have the Christian Kirk career arc where you're a second-round pick, you played fine, you showed flashes of brilliance, but not enough potency, as I say, to warrant a second deal that you could get much more from on the open market like Christian Kirk got. I'm not saying Byron Murphy, if he has an average year, will get what Christian Kirk got, but next year, the salary cap is going to start getting even sillier. So that also may warrant the Cardinals re-signing him if he plays well. Is he a cornerback 1? Is he a CB1? That's the number 5 storyline for me going into 2022. Number 4, this could be number 1 in many years, but this year has been a weird year for the Arizona Cardinals. So number 4 is, can Isaiah Simmons emerge? Can he take that step? Can he take that step where you don't see another Hassan Reddick have one good year and walk out the door? Can he take that next step? Make Steve Keim want to give you a second contract. And I'll tell you what, he's got all the opportunity in the world, baby. He's got all the opportunity in the world to show everyone that he has Pro Bowl upside. He's got the tools. He's got it between the ears. He needs to put it together. Can he emerge? Can he emerge to be maybe the second most important player on the defense, not named Budda Baker? Can he? We'll see. That's number 4. Number 3 for me. Can the Cardinals put together a full season? Now, this is with the caveat that they don't have to win 7 of their first 8 or something and then hold it together. That's not what I'm saying. Can the Cardinals put together a 17-week season? They could start 2-4 and then emerge and finish 10-8, 10-7, if my math serves me correctly, and make the playoffs. I'd almost rather them be around 500 and then make a push and make the playoffs instead of front-loading their wins and limping, backpedaling into the playoffs like we saw last year. The microcosm of last year and the mental strength that was tied to it was the Arizona Cardinals did not clinch a playoff berth by themselves. Now, they probably would have, but after starting 7-0 and 10-2 and having a 3-game lead in the NFC West with only a handful to play, and you can't clinch a playoff spot on your own, that was all that needs to be said from last year regarding the growth of this organization. Started hot, couldn't finish. Can they put together a full season? Can they? That's number 3 for me. It would be number 2, but Rodney Hudson's number 2. Rodney Hudson could be 1A. I mean, he is 1A at this point because if he retires, I'm catching from a lot of different angles here, calling me, because I said that Steve Keim on Twitter, if he knew that Rodney Hudson could retire and they didn't address the offensive line, that he's more detached from reality than I thought, I got a response saying, hey, a lot of your tweets maybe questions which one you or Steve Keim is more detached from reality. From a very reputable, guy here. Actually, a great interview. Talked to him a bunch of times. If Steve Keim knew that Rodney Hudson could retire and he didn't draft an offensive lineman and chose to trade for Hollywood Brown with Tyler Linderbaum on the docket still to draft, that is a detachment from reality that I didn't think Steve Keim was capable of. Regardless of the offensive, regardless of DeAndre Hopkins potentially being out, if Rodney Hudson retires, the Cardinals' offensive line is automatically bottom 5 in the NFL. And I don't know why. I don't know. I don't understand the vitriol behind that statement. I don't get it. If Rodney Hudson retires, the Cardinals' offensive line is bad. It is a bad offensive line. It goes from being an average to above average to bad. And Steve Keim decided not to draft a perennial all-pro or Pro Bowl center. You play him at guard if Rodney Hudson comes back, and then you play him at center. Ask the Colts how they felt about drafting Ryan Kelly at the end of the first round a handful of years ago. Worked out pretty well for them. Rodney Hudson's storyline is the second biggest going into the 2022 season. And first, obviously, is Kyler Murray's contract. You can believe, and it makes sense to believe that Kyler Murray will have a deal. No problem. It'll get done. Steve Keim said it's his future on the Pat McAfee show. Until it gets done, I don't believe that Michael Bidwell is going to pay Kyler Murray before training camp or before week 1. I don't believe it until I see it. Because Michael Bidwell has never done this before. He's never been in a position to do it, drafting a young quarterback and pushing him through with all the money that's happening now, and the big money quarterbacks are getting even more so, exponentially more over the last 15 years. He's never done it, so until he does it, I don't believe he's going to do it before the season starts. Because that means he's going to have to be less cheap and actually pay a player. I think he's ranked 30th in spending of owners in the NFL. Until he does it, I don't believe that he's going to do it before the season starts. I want to see it before you just say, oh yeah, it's going to happen. Give me one reason to make me believe that you just are so content with believing that it's going to happen. I'm a little bit harder to prove. I don't trust Michael Bidwell as much as many do out there. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals, top 5 list roll on here. Coming up next, X factors for the 2022 NFL season. This was the most fun list that I did for this segment, for this podcast, and I'm going to hit it next. BetOnline.ag first. It's your number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Talked about it. We continue to talk about it. They're family here. Find all your latest sports developments, league reviews, and news, including this year's NHL playoffs that just ended. I mean, how great was that Game 6? You thought that when Tampa Bay scored first, like, oh, Game 7, sexy time, NHL Stanley Cup, Game 7, best moment in sports, not named the Super Bowl. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information, including live betting, esports, and more. Go to the website or use your mobile device today to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. Final segment, Locked On Cardinals. Top 5 best players. First segment, top 5 storylines. Second segment. This is going to be a really fun one. This is going to be a really, really fun one. Top 5 X factors. The Cardinals are full. The Cardinals have a roster full of X factors. Look at me here. We just had a breakthrough. You and me. We just witnessed my word vomit turning into the definition of the Arizona Cardinals roster. Let's take a second here. Let's take about 5 seconds and just appreciate what just happened. The Arizona Cardinals, their roster is one big X factor. It could go great, and they could make a Super Bowl run, or it could not. But these are the top 5 of the many X factors heading into the 2022 NFL season for the Arizona Cardinals. Number 5, Byron Murphy. Byron Murphy is a massive X factor because the Cardinals did nothing to improve the cornerback room. Okay? They did nothing. Sure, the Jeff Gladney situation, obviously terrible, just unfathomable. Okay? Like, it's hard to discuss the cornerback room because obviously you don't want to discuss, like, come on. I'm human here. It's an atrocity that happened. Just, anyways, Byron Murphy, is he a cornerback one? He's the X factor in the cornerback room. Can he do it? Marco Wilson, not yet. There's not expectation on Marco Wilson's name yet. There's expectation on Byron Murphy's name. Number 5. Number 4 is the rookies, just in general. And the reason why I group them together is there wasn't a first-round pick. Had a second, Trey McBride. We'll see what his role is. If it's going to be more blocking, more George Kittle-y than a tight end like Kyle Pitts that becomes an immediate offensive weapon. Obviously, Atlanta and Cardinals offensive skill position players are vastly different talent levels. And then the kids, Jai Sanders and Cam Thomas, like, we don't know. We don't know what they are. 3rd-round picks. They're going to be moved around the line, moved onto the edge. We don't really know we have no idea. And then Keontae Ingram, the running back out of USC that people are super stoked on. Cool. Like, if the Cardinals can hit on an Elijah Mitchell, that'd be badass. That'd be fantastic because that would pave the way for so many different opportunities in the running back room and not having to spend money every year on a running back. You can draft. So I'm grouping them together because none of them, even though they are going to be required to make an impact for the defense specifically to work, there's not a guy that's a blue chipper. But I guess Trey McBride is. Let me take that back. But the Cardinals already have all these skill position players. So the question around taking the best player available, that's what happened with the Cardinals. And they had needs elsewhere, but drafting him, it makes sense for what they're trying to do in the grand scheme of things, which is have a high-powered offense. But he's not needed to perform this year for the offense to work. It'd be a benefit, but he's not needed to. So that's why I group them in together as being the X factors as a unit, even though they play on the opposite, a couple defensive, couple offensive players. Number 3 is Isaiah Simmons. And Isaiah Simmons should be number 1, okay? But there's a couple different situations surrounding this roster where it doesn't necessarily make it so. I don't fan out a lot here. Okay, I don't, because I like to keep, like, it's fun when they're winning. Like, I don't like talking about negative things, but sometimes they need to be talked about. I mean, it's just the nature of the sport and the nature of the team. I will fan the S out if Isaiah Simmons takes that leap. Think of a more fun player. He's Budda Baker at 6'3", 240. That's what he is. And if Isaiah Simmons takes that leap and he gets 2 picks this season, maybe 6 or 7 sacks, a lot of pressures, and just mauls people like he did on 4th and goal. I think it was third and goal against Derrick Henry week 1 because Tannehill scored, and then the one on Trey Lance on 4th and goal in a game that the Cardinals probably could have lost. I mean, I think it was 17-10 where he stops him on the goal line. Unfortunately got injured, but I think he popped back in the game. If you see that in a bountiful fashion, Isaiah Simmons he'll be must-see TV immediately across the NFL. He has that in him. And we'll see if Vance Joseph, et cetera, linebackers coach, et cetera, can massage that out of him. So this is the year where he takes the leap. And he's going to be on the field a lot. So we're going to see a lot. Number 2, these both are circumstantial, but they are going into the 2022 season, so they're ranked as such. Number 2 is Hollywood Brown, the biggest X factor, second biggest X factor. If DeAndre Hopkins wasn't out, he wouldn't be on this list. But Hollywood Brown has been wide receiver 1 in a run-firsty offense, but just because Mark Andrews is technically a tight end. So if Mark Andrews, if it wasn't positionally, first option in the offense for the Ravens is Mark Andrews. You know, obviously down the field it's Hollywood Brown, but it's Mark Andrews. So Hollywood Brown is going to have 6 weeks against some good defenses to show if he's a wide receiver 1. And, I mean, you'd think he's going to perform, like he'll get the deep balls. He'll probably catch 2 or 3 deep balls for touchdowns in the first 6 weeks. That's not the ding. It's 3rd and 7. Can he run a hard route, turn around, and catch a screamer from Kyler Murray? He's had some dropsy doodles in the past for walk-in touchdowns or while in the end zone. But if he emerges in his 4th year in a pass-first, really, offense and emerges as a wide receiver 1, this offense has no ceiling. None. It has 0 ceiling. And also, if he doesn't show up, he's used to double teams, but Mark Andrews gets more of the double teams. Plus, defenses have to stack the box in Baltimore because of Lamar Jackson and because they're plentiful amount of running backs who it's the movie Rockstar. I allude to this once in a while where it's, you know, the Mark Wahlberg movie where there's a lead singer of a band. Mark Wahlberg is a fanboy. He's in the front row. The lead singer of the band just gives Mark Wahlberg the microphone at one point. Mark Wahlberg just takes over as the lead singer of the band and they dress the same. That's what it's like with Baltimore. Doesn't matter who the jerseys are. They just put up numbers. So now boxes will not be stacked as much, even though obviously with Kyler Murray, they will be a little bit, but the Cardinals don't focus on the run like Baltimore does. So if Hollywood Brown can adapt to that spy that he'll have, or that double team that he'll have a little bit more than he would have in Baltimore, that's an X factor in not the greatest way. Because what Steve Keim traded for him, even though they got a 3rd back, and the short amount, I talked about this yesterday, the short amount of wiggle room before he's going to want a big money deal is minute compared to drafting a wide receiver at 23 overall. So the X factor, he should be number 1. So should Isaiah Simmons. But the number 1 X factor is Rodney Hudson. And this is storyline. This is just storyline redundant because if Rodney Hudson retires, the Arizona Cardinals have a bottom 5 offensive line in the NFL. That's an uncomfortable truth, but Rodney Hudson is so important to the future of this organization and protecting Kyler Murray. And Steve Keim refuses to draft an offensive lineman in the 1st round or 2nd round when it's absolutely necessary. 2020, 2021, and this year. And he just punted on it. We'll see. That was the top 5 lists for Thursday. I got 3 more ringers for you tomorrow. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Thanks for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen today. Make Locked On NFL your second listen. You can see my ugly mug with Tyler Rowland of Locked On Titans over in the Locked On NFL channel and free and available wherever you get your platform or wherever you get your podcast for your listening pleasure. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. I'll talk to you tomorrow.